Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Ringside Nutrition Podcast. Today, I'm very lucky because I'm joined by professional boxer and current cruiserweight Commonwealth champion, Chris Billam-Smith. Chris, thank you so much for offering your time up to come on the podcast today. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me on. I love talking about nutrition and things as we'll find out. But yeah, I'm glad to be on, mate.
I guess it's nice to be on the flip side and be on the other side of the podcast mic or not hosting it.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed hosting it. I've been on a couple before, and it's sort of what gave me the idea to start my own. So I like being on both sides.
So we'll talk more about like the podcast, Chris, of what you got going, because I've listened to it and it's, for anybody listening, the Perfect Athlete podcast, fantastic listen. But what else have you been up to recently? You've been over in America with Luke Campbell. How was that?
Yeah, good. Had Christmas at home, then flew out there on the 27th of December. So we spent New Year out there, and obviously Luke was asleep by the time New Year came in because he had a fight on the 2nd of January. But we're out in Dallas, and me and Josh Pritchard, who's Shane McGuigan's right hand man, we made the most of it. We went up to the pool on the roof of the hotel and sat in the jacuzzi as midnight came in. So that was about as good as it got. But we thought we're never going to be in Dallas again. Not very often you get to spend the turn of the year in a jacuzzi on a rooftop. So we thought we'd make the most of it.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. Was it did you think when you were out there, like, I wish this was kind of like me fighting, or I want to get a fight booked in for like fighting in America? Would it be something that you'd ever like want to do, fighting abroad?
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation earlier with a friend, and I said I'd love to fight out there. Like, it's motivated me anyway, just being around those sort of fights and the whole week. But I'd love to fight out in America. Yeah, definitely on the bucket list to fight out there. It's a lot of British fighters like to go out there and get the big shot, whether it's Vegas or Madison Square Garden. But see, Luke Campbell's boxed out there a few times, spent a lot of his career out there boxing in massive fights. So it was fairly normal for him. But yeah, it was a great experience, and the fight week out there was really good.
I guess you're just suffering a little bit now from jet lag coming back.
Yeah, like I said, I was up at about 3:30 this morning until about 8:15, and then I've slept until about 12. So suffering a little bit. I've got my coffee here, so I'll keep sipping it throughout to make sure I don't tail off.
Yeah, awesome. So the reason why I kind of like wanted to get you on, Chris, is because I've listened. I've spoken to your nutritionist James Moran, who's a friend of mine, about how kind of like into your nutrition you are, and obviously your podcast is all about chasing those 1% and becoming the perfect athlete. Why did you kind of like get interested in nutrition, or was there like a trigger for like the getting into your sleep and your nutrition and your training and just doing things the right way? Was there ever kind of like a trigger? Where did your journey, so to speak, kind of start into that?
Well, obviously, boxing's a weight making sport. We have to maximize your weight and maximize your performance at a certain weight. You want to be performing the best you can possibly perform, but being at the lowest weight possible. So obviously nutrition is going to come into that. And I looked into different courses and stuff and nutrition, and tried everything as an amateur. Early on it was sort of like a low carb thing, because it was you just end up being just looking online and finding, you don't look at performance as such, you just look at ways to lose weight. And then obviously low carb, keto, and sort of Atkins diets and stuff like that were famous and stuff like that. Very hard to perform on those sort of diets at a high intensity. But yeah, then I ended up doing a nutrition course, paying for myself to do one. I was personal training and still an amateur fighter at the time. And I started doing body type nutrition with Ben Coomber. I did that course, did the course there, and really liked the idea of it, because I thought I'm going to come out of it and know then when I do get a nutritionist to make me accountable, although I'll know what's right and what's wrong. I think the pass rate at the time was like a 31% first time pass rate on the course, which I liked, because you knew you were going to come out competent and you know your stuff if you passed. So yeah, it was that I did that course, and I just always, it was just nutrition for me was the first area that I could sort of improve myself and look at myself, that I knew was going to help my performance. So yeah, I just got into it from probably my early 20s up till now, and I'm still learning every day.
So you take it on yourself to obviously like become educated. Do you think that the education is almost like the biggest part of it? Because when I listened to that podcast episode with James, and you're talking about just like building and continuously educating yourself, do you feel like the education is like the most important part of it?
Yeah, definitely. I like to understand. Some people will just do what they're told, and they don't want to know why. They just trust someone. But I'm always very much, I like to know why. Even when I'm boxing, I like to know why my feet have got to be in a certain position, or why this works and why this doesn't work, and why I can't throw a certain shot. I very much like to know why. So for me, that was the education part of it, was huge, to know why I was doing things, and why you know you should eat this amount of whatever, whether that's carbs or whatever it is. Yeah, so the why was a big factor, and obviously educating myself answered why a lot of the time.
I always find it's like super interesting how like a fighter or somebody, just any person in general, would not really want to know the why. They just want to know the what. So they'd almost say like they put a pill in front of them and say like take this supplement or take this bowl of food. In my head, or for me personally, I'd always think like, okay, but why? And then once I understand the why, like you said, it's like, okay, I can get down with that, and I understand that and how it's going to benefit me or my sport or my body composition, etc. Um, what do you think like challenges are then for fighters who don't really want to know the why? Do you think it's dangerous, or do you kind of just accept it and just say like that's just on an individual basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it can. It's just kind of. This might sound a bit wrong, but it's very much a working class sport. So I think a lot of boxers are less educated in general, than say other sports where it's cricket or tennis. They're very much sort of higher class sports a lot of the time, because it costs money to do those sports, and naturally, with the way society works, the more money someone has, usually the better educated that they are, and the better education they go through. And I think sometimes with boxers that aren't as well educated, obviously there's a huge amount out there. I mean, everyone in the gym, my gym's very well educated. They know what they're doing, and they want to know why. But you get some people that just, other boxers that aren't as well educated, and they can't be asked to learn. They just want to know what's going to make them better, and that's all they care about. A lot of the time, those fighters that are like that become the best ones anyway, because all they focus on is their boxing, and somebody else just tells them what to do, and they just do it. As long as they hire the right person, then they're going to get the results, because the right person will tell them, do this and that, and you'll achieve this. So they just focus on that. They do it. They don't think twice about it. It might take up less of their energy to focus on the why, and they can just focus on what they need to do, and working hard. So it might be a benefit to not want to know why, but for me, I need to know why.
So like in camp, Chris, when you're working with James, would you almost have like a strategy which you'd follow, because it's maybe out of camp, you've got like the really good level of education, you're an intelligent guy, that you kind of know what to be doing outside of camp or setting your own goals? But in camp, is it more of a thing where you like to have that kind of plan in place so that you can just focus on your boxing, or do you take a bit of more impetus in until it gets to fight week sort of thing? Be good to kind of talk through the whole process, mate, from start of camp to fight week, and kind of make our way through that.
Yeah, so I've been working with James for just over a year now, I think, and I like to be held accountable for my actions. So I think that's a massive part to play in being successful in anything. You've got to hold yourself accountable. So having James there is, one, he's super knowledgeable, as you know, and he definitely helps me achieve a lot more and get everything absolutely right. He knows a lot more than me. There's plenty of things I miss with supplements and certain things that I don't know. So he not only does he help me, but he helps hold me accountable for what I'm doing. And I've got we sort of have a weigh-in at the beginning, and I'm this weight. He'll come up with a plan. We'll sort my meals out, which is good because he talks to me about what I would normally eat, and it's not a drastic change. It's just tweaking a few things here and there, because you don't want to. It wants to be as normal as possible without going over the top.
So do you like that whole process of sort of like having your meals there throughout the week to kind of just like grab, and it's in the back of your mind, it's just taken care of, and then you just got to plug the gaps and just get your own breakfast or your own shakes and stuff? Does that work like well for you in camp?
Yeah, it works really well. We sort out lunch and dinner from Fuel Hub. Their meals are super. They're the best, by far the best.
Yeah, they're good, aren't they?
Meals we've had. They're really good. The roasted lamb one, the minted lamb, is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I didn't think meal prep could taste that good. So shout out to Fuel Hub. But yeah, I have those for lunch and dinner, and then I sort out my own breakfast. So then we've got snacks sorted throughout the day. But I guess by having James there and sorting all that, I know it's taken care of. So and because I already know why we're doing it, it sort of is just that laziness of being a boxer, just taking something out. You don't have to. For me, I don't have to train, come back and cook and make sure like I'm counting and weighing foods out or whatever it is, and having to do all of that when I've got another training session in 3 or 4 hours time, and so it could be quite difficult when you got to cook all your own meals. So the meal prep makes it easy. In the morning it's easier. It's a shake or eggs and salmon and a bagel or something like that, or yogurt and some berries or whatever it may be in the morning, which is nice and simple to do. But I definitely struggle if I had to cook all 3 meals of the day and sort out the snacks.
It's just like I said, it's taking up that mental headspace in it of you've got to like go and do the food shop. It sounds really bad, doesn't it? You've got to go, this is all things that everybody has to do. It's like, they go and do the food shop, weigh it all out, prepare it all, batch cook it. It's almost like if you want to get home and you're tired and you've got another like triple training day, it's just taken care of, isn't it? And you can just sort of...
Yeah, that's it. And it's when you are training at the intensity we are, you want to get the most out of your sessions and focus on them. You don't want to have to just feel like rushing throughout the day. A lot of times as well, in between sessions, I'll have a quick 20-minute, half-hour nap. So if I'm doing that and I've got to cook and stuff, I might miss out on that, which can be crucial for me sometimes. Like to get the best out of my sessions is planning that napping, especially on heavy days where I'm doing like a sparring and a big weight session or a run as well that day. And sparring days can take a lot out of you, so a nap can be pretty important. So yeah, just having that that taken out of my hands and out of my mind, it definitely helps.
Is that something you're quite big on, mate? That the whole like sleep, and do you think it's like underrated? I always say it's like a pyramid, and you got like supplements and timings and stuff. Sleep is probably number one for me, and what a lot of people don't realize is it's free. So it's a free recovery tool, which a lot of people neglect. You quite big on your sleep now?
Yeah, obviously I've got my Whoop, which is tracks all my sleep and my activity throughout the day and my heart rate variability, so my recovery and stuff like that, which is something I've become really in tune with my body. It helps me get, I've always wanted to find improvements. Since I've had it, it's made me accountable for my sleep, which a lot of the time you go to bed at 11 and wake up at 7 and you go, oh, I've had 8 hours. But really, once you get one of these on, they're very accurate, and it tell you actually you're awake for an hour that time. So you're getting like an hour's less sleep than you actually realize. And I think, when was it? Maybe October or November, I think I was trying to get average a minimum of 8 hours a night. It's because I was always like a 7:40, 7:50 max. Sometimes it was like 7:20, 7 hours, 20 minutes average a night, which for any parents watching this, of young kids, they'll probably, wish they had that. But You know, that's been the normal for me. So when I get like 7 hours 15 average or anything around then, I was definitely takes its toll. And just those 20 minutes or 20, 30, 40 minutes extra a night average makes a huge difference to my energy levels and everything. So
That's what I was
yeah, I've
going to say.
become a lot bigger on sleep.
Do you feel like much better in yourself during the day? Do you feel, can you sort of track it in the days where you slept a little bit less hours or your sleep quality is not been as good? Do you feel like much more lethargic, energized, or if, because it's on the flip side, isn't it? Like I always feel when I sleep too much, like you could sleep 10, 11 hours, you feel lethargic the rest of the day and you feel lazy. It's a really fine balance. Do you ever feel like on different days you get like lethargic or lacking energy, or have you got it kind of like banged on now of that 8 hours for you?
Yeah, for me, I very rarely sleep in camp. When I'm in camp and I'm focused on my sleep, I very rarely sleep less than 7 hours, and usually no more than 8.5. Sometimes you get, you know, woken up and stuff like that, but it is what it is. But yeah, it's usually 7 to 8.5 hours, which seems to work for me. But I'm really uh, sort of really keen on like making sure I get over 8 hours, because I definitely feel a huge benefit to like the difference between getting 20 minutes extra a night. I've really noticed it's really helped me improve and get the most out of my sessions, which then get the most out of my training, which helps me improve quicker, which it's all a snowball effect in whatever direction it works. So if you're getting 20 minutes less, you're gonna, you know, gradually get worse and worse, and then if you're getting 20 minutes more, you're gonna get better and better. And it's a snowball effect, and you've got to make it work for you, make sure it works for you.
Probably a habit as well of people trying to get into that routine. It's talked about quite a lot. I'm going to get a better sleep, sleep routine. I'm going to get into a routine before I go to bed. Is there anything you do which is like a, not a ritual, but you kind of do it? You have a routine before you go to bed. Do you like have a shower, or do you read, or blue light blockers or stuff, or chamomile tea? Like what's do you do any sort of certain religious kind of stuff before you go to sleep?
No, I always make sure I'm hydrated before I sleep. That seems to affect my HRV massively. I try not to eat too late now, because I found that affects my HRV as well hugely, because if I eat too late, my body's obviously still processing the food. I used to eat probably like 8:30, 9 at night sometimes.
Is that full meal or like a snack or
Yeah,
something?
like a big meal, usually because I haven't eaten enough during the day, so I'm trying to get my calories in. Like this is before I was working with James, to be fair. So I'd be eating late, but yeah, so I've had my Whoop about a year now, and I've really noticed the later I eat, you know, the less I'm recovered I am, and the lower my HRV is. So make sure I'm eating at a reasonable time, around 6 or 7. Give myself 3 or 4 hours before going to sleep to digest my food. Make sure I'm hydrated, and then yeah, if I read, I always seem to sleep better. I get a lot more deep sleep when I've read before bed. So yeah, I'll try and do that as well. It can be hard in camp when you know, you just get stuck on your phone and stuff like that sometimes. But yeah, just especially if I'll be in camp and Bournemouth are playing midweek, I'll be watching them on my phone, and then I just end up staying on my phone and talk to my mates about the game, or whatever it may be. And but by the time it's 10:30, I've been on my phone for, you know, 2.5 hours, so that's not ideal.
I
But
think everybody's
yeah,
doing
and the
it
blue
that way.
light, yeah. But yeah, so I just make sure I'm good with my phone. And but yeah, blue light blockers is something I'm looking into getting soon. I think that'll help me massively. There's like a blue light filter on the phone, but how good that is, I don't know. And also the just the stimulation from the phone anyway, of everything it's triggering. So yeah, definitely blue light blockers and reading before bed, I think will help me even further.
How do you feel with your sleep then when you're preparing for a fight? So like the night before a fight and you're staying in a hotel. So like at fight camp, for example, how did you deal with your sleep? Did you wear your whoop that week, and did you notice like any drop-offs or changes in sleep the night before because of nerves, or were you sleep was relatively the same?
I think one of my worst days of recovery was the night before the weigh-in, because I'm making weight and stuff like that. And not as hydrated as optimally as you could be, because obviously you're just dropping a little bit of water weight or whatever. So I think the night before the weigh-in, I was quite bad. My recovery, I think it was like down at about 12%, or maybe it was 20% on the day of my fight. I can't remember what way around it was, but I think I was 12 or 13% recovered on the whoop, which is the lowest I've ever been. That was the day of the weigh-in. I then weighed in, ate that night, and I ate quite late that night, to be honest. Like obviously afternoon you're refueling and stuff, and then at night I ate quite late. Probably the stress of everything that's, you know, making weight, and then you're loading up and stuff. So I had quite a lot of calories probably to process. So I ended up waking up the day of my fight at like, I think I was like 20% recovered max, which a lot of people will just go, wow, like Jesus, like I couldn't do that. But like a lot of people, like Luke took his off because he doesn't want to know, which I get. Like you got to perform either way, but I just thought I'll wear it. Like, and for me, I focus more on my sleep than my recovery. So as long as I get, you know, 8 hours sleep with a decent amount of deep and decent amount of REM, like mentally, I know I'm good to go. And I had a good enough deep sleep and good enough REM sleep. So I just thought, it doesn't matter. Like I've got to fight anyway. So I feel good in myself. I just sort of listen to my body, and sort of as much as accurate as the whoop is, I think listening to myself, especially on fight day, is the most important. And naturally, because you're so motivated for the fight, you're going to overcome any sort of data that you might read, because you're so buzzing to fight. And so it was all right on the night. So
I think it went well anyway, mate. So
yeah, so it's nice to know that even if the whoop says I'm not very recovered, I felt as good as I did in the ring, walk into the ring, and obviously performed well as well. So that's it's all good.
So collecting all this individual data, I always say that the more data you have, the more that you can get a bit more pinpoint with individualized stuff. So you've got like the sleep data and stuff from the whoop telling you about your recovery. Do you collect any other data? On your podcast episode, you spoke a bit about sweat rate testing. I know there's a place down in Precision Hydration down in Christchurch where kind of like we're from. Do you want to talk about that, and how have you found that? Like, when did you get into getting your own sweat rate tested again? It's like going up another 1-2% with hydration. When did you get that sort of testing done, and have you found it?
Yeah, before my last fight, I got it. I'd heard about the guys, and one of my friends who's in the military told me about it. He does a lot of ultra running, and he was like, oh yeah, I've got these, and he's like, try them out, go get. So I thought, yeah, I'll go and get. That makes sense. It's another thing to look at, especially during training, and it's actually surprised me massively. Even in the podcast episode I did with Precision Hydration, they spoke a lot about overhydrating. So like obviously the electrolyte levels are going to get diluted because you're smashing in loads of water all the time and stuff like that. So that was a really interesting point for me, and I think I've definitely overhydrated a lot through my career before working with these guys. So now I'll have some electrolytes in my drink most days now, especially on big training days. I'll have the stronger products of theirs. So basically they test your sweat and see how much electrolytes, salt, sodium mainly that you lose through your sweat. And although I'm not a massively salty sweater, I do sweat a lot. So it's quite important for me to make sure I get all that under control and stay as hydrated as I can with the right amount of electrolytes as well. So they've helped me massively, and definitely got more out of my training since working with them.
Yeah, and it also has like the effect of like pre-hydrating, isn't it? Do you ever take some stuff before you spar and then kind of like pre-hydrate like you would do before you fight? Do you ever take, I say with the guys with Precision Hydration, with the fighters I work with that have their products, it's either the yellow drink, the orange drink, or the purple drink. Seem to understand that a little bit better, as opposed to like, oh, it's the 1,500 milligrams strength one, and they're like, what does that mean? It's like, okay, before sparring, purple one. Then it's like much more understandable. Do you ever like pre-hydrate with any of them drinks?
Yeah, so on sparring days, I'll usually have a purple. which is obviously the 1500 milligrams. Have one of them before I train. Usually have the sachet ones, which have obviously got some carbs in as well. So have those before I spar, and they work really well. So I think I sparred just before Christmas, and one of the last training session I did at the gym last year. So did a sparring session, and I woke up in the morning, hadn't slept a huge amount, got in a cold shower and sort of woke myself up, had a good warm up, had one of those, and I sparred fairly well considering it's my first spar in a while. I was pretty pleased with it, and so it definitely helps you get, doing that pre-hydration is definitely important, especially for things such as sparring, and more importantly on fight night.
Is that important one for, was it like a morning spar, so you couldn't get an opportunity to get some like easy digestible food in beforehand?
Yeah, I struggled to eat a massive breakfast anyway, and then I think I was sparring at about 10. So if I'm waking up at 8, I've got 2 hours to sort of get myself ready, which is not a huge amount of time before to eat digest a full meal. So I'll probably have like a bagel with some banana or peanut butter or something, like, or half a bagel, something like that, and then maybe like the collagen shots, repair shots from Nutrition X, with the BCAAs in and stuff, and then get the precision hydration in as well. So that seems to work pretty well because it doesn't sit on your stomach too much. Don't want to eat loads and be full when you're going into a fight or sparring. So I think I find them really good because they've got the carbs and the strong electrolytes. And I have just trained on just them in the morning sometimes, if I've just woke up too late before a training session. So they're definitely massively beneficial.
Yeah. Do you ever have them post weigh-in as well? Do you ever have any of those kind of electrolytes post weigh-in? Because you see people talking about that hypernatremia and flooding the body with too much water, and it's not about how much water goes into the body, it's how much water gets its way into the cells, and obviously the electrolytes help with that process of getting it across the cell membrane. But
absolutely. That's the first thing we drink is an electrolyte drink, for that exact reason. You've taken water out of the body, you need to get it absorbed as quick as possible. So that's the first thing we drink is an electrolyte drink. I usually have the 1500, 500 ml of that, get that in me as quick as possible. After the weigh-in, that's the first thing you'll see when I get off the scales. That'd be the first thing that I consume, would be the 1500 ones.
Yeah. And how close do you, a bit of a sidetrack there, but how close do you eat that main meal? Because you're completely right about having that electrolytes and rehydrating is the priority. Then obviously drip feeding some carbs back in to top up the fuel tank, and then going for that main meal. You said you had that at fight camp, you had that main meal later in the evening. What sort of time after the weigh-in do you have your kind of big main meal? Hope you're not going to Nando's, are you?
I have done in the past for other fights. But we were in the bubble last time, so we just had everything, meals. We had to actually order meals in. It was quite difficult because I had a meal prep company before, which wasn't Fuel Hub, and they actually forgot to send my meals in on fight week.
Yeah, I remember reading about this.
So I was meant to get the meals in on the Wednesday, so I didn't have any meals sent to me, which I was supposed to get from the Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, which Wednesday, Thursday aren't as important because you can sort of make up, they're there because you're making weight. It's just high protein, which you can get a source of anyway, like in the hotel and stuff. But it wasn't ideal. But then obviously post weigh-in, I had no meals, so I had to actually order food in, which wasn't ideal. But I sort of just ordered what I had to get in me, and got that down me, and then that was probably maybe 2 hours after the weigh-in, because wanted to get hydrated first, and then obviously to help me digest the food. And then I think we probably got that about an hour and a half to 2 hours after the weigh-in.
Yeah.
And then had another meal in the evening. It's sort of a smaller meal to begin with, and then a bigger meal in the evening. But I think it took ages to come or something because we had to order it in. It was like a delivery job. So it wasn't ideal. The food in the hotel wasn't great. We were just obviously in a bubble in Essex, and the food in the hotel wasn't great. So we had to order food in, and it was definitely difficult. One of the more difficult times with meals and stuff, because you're locked in a hotel and you've got a limited amount of, or limited options on the food. So it was different, that's for sure, but it was a good experience for me moving forward.
What did you see? Like, you had your plan in place, obviously with the whole meal prep gate thing, it didn't turn up, but what were like other people doing? Did you notice that you were more kind of like prepared than other people? Were there other people just head into like the food at the hotel? Were there other people kind of like just downing stuff straight after weigh-in, or going for like chicken and all that kind of stuff? And what did you see like when you're actually at the fight camp?
Yeah, to be honest, funnily enough, there was probably 3 of us that all had the same meal prep company, 3 or 4 of us, and I know 2 of them got their meals. But yeah, I actually picked up one of their meals because I thought it was for me because it didn't have a name on it, and I had told the security that I had my meal prep coming, and it just never showed. So I took this one lot of meals and took it all out of the box, put it in the fridge, and then got a text saying from the company saying they're not your meals, yours are coming later or tomorrow or something. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I packed it all back away, gave it to the person whose it was, and then mine just never showed. And I was like, okay, I can't have that on fight week again. So then obviously James sorted me out with Fuel Hub. And they've been good as gold. They've been spot on. Every order's been great, and the meals are much nicer as well. So
yeah, brilliant company. Shout out to Fuel Hub, great meal prep company.
yeah.
Talking through then like the fight day, do you have any like rituals before you fight? Obviously, this can be like with anything, mate. Like, it should be cool for the people listening. Is it nutrition related? Is there a certain time frame like where you have your last meal before you fight? Do you have anything like in when you're warming up on the pads and stuff, or do you have like any rituals or superstitions which you usually go through but before you fight?
Not really, not any, just a good warm up. I've got this, don't know if you ever heard of a yantra mat. They're like a acupressure mat, and I like to warm up on it just by standing on it on my feet, like barefoot, because it just like wakes my feet up. Yeah. So I've got to get a few looks off people, like the commissioner who comes in and the drugs testing people will look at like, what the hell is that thing, and why is he stood on it barefoot? But yeah, it's I don't know. I think my mum had it years ago to try and help her sleep or something, and I've just used it just to fire my feet up, basically. And so yeah, I use that before warm up for the last fight. I don't always use it, but yeah, it helps just wake my feet up, really, a bit like the golf ball rollout sort of thing on the foot. But no, nothing in no sort of superstitions or rituals or anything. I just a good warm up. I very much get in the zone when I get my hands wrapped. So like I had Anthony Fowler in the same change room, obviously with gym mates. We were in the same change room, and he's just the same person throughout fight week, throughout warming up, throughout the fight, walking to the ring. He's the same person, but I very much flip a switch where I'm chilled out, could laugh and that. I can have a laugh in the change room, but then once the warm up starts, I'm sort of, that's it. It's I'm warmed up and I'm just in the zone, and I'm not up for joking around or anything. I just want to focus on the task in hand, and I do that and get in the zone, and then get the fight done. Then it's back to normal. But yeah, then when with regards to eating and stuff, it's just I don't like to eat too late. I don't like to eat too much either on the day. I'd rather sort of drink my calories earlier in the morning, and obviously got to keep them steady throughout the day. But yeah, I wouldn't want to go into the fight too full or needing the toilet, which you hear stories of boxers doing that before, and needing the toilet on the way to the ring and stuff. So thankfully that's never happened. But yeah, it's just making sure obviously hydrated and fed well, and as optimal as you can going into the ring.
And then when you get out the ring after the fight, what's your go-to meal afterwards?
If it's in Bournemouth, which a few of my fights have been, I always head to Chicken and Blues, which if you're ever down this way again, mate, just check out Chicken and Blues. They're just a local one, but they're a superb wraps and mac and cheese bites and a little bit of a cheat meal. And but yeah, anything. I think after fight camp, the only thing that was open, we drove home to Josh Pritchard came home and stayed at mine that night, and we stopped at Cobham Services. That was the only place open, and we stopped there. And the only place that opened in there was a KFC. And I very much I don't really like fast food, but it was literally the only thing I could eat that I could get hot. So unfortunately, I had to have a KFC. But I'd usually very rarely do I eat McDonald's or KFC. I mean, I haven't had McDonald's in about 7.5 years. KFC I've probably had about 3 times in that time. And I'd rather not, but once you've had a fight, if there's ever a time to have fun, I think it was then on the night when nothing else was open.
So you didn't go into everyone's change room handing out burgers then? When doing
No, I was. I've had 5 guys after a fight. I do enjoy 5 guys now and again, but no, I wasn't like Usyk and Chisora and cheersing with my burgers.
It's crazy. I know a professional fighter. I won't obviously put his name, but I had a KFC before he same day weigh in, had a KFC because he had like no option of what was. Well, he always had options, but didn't plan ahead and just I'll get a KFC. I've got a few hours before a fight, and then was sick a few times before he was fighting because in the warm up it was just sat like that fatty kind of like fried food just sat in his gut. You haven't ever done anything like that in the amateurs or anything like had any food?
I mean, in the amateurs, it was very much a Tesco or Sainsbury's pasta pot early days, which was the stand. I think 90% of amateur boxers that was their standard thing, because it was very, like I said, there's not the nutrition education a lot of the time, especially when you first start the sport. The coaches are very old school, so it's like just get some pasta or carbs in you. But you're weighing in sometimes as little as 3 hours before you fight. So you weigh in, and then you've got to get a pasta pot down you, and then and try and perform on that sitting in your stomach, which was pretty awful. Towards the end, I used to try, and because we didn't have long, I used to maybe try and get a little bowl of cereal down me with some skimmed milk. So it was all slightly faster processed and sort of got through me fairly quick. But like I said, I only had like 4 or 5 hours before I was fighting. But it was definitely difficult. I'm a lot better educated now, and I probably wouldn't do a lot of the stuff I did as an amateur now. But yeah, it was, as an amateur, it was definitely difficult, and there was always empty pasta pots in the change room, whether they were mine or someone else's. That was I reckon amateur boxers were the biggest buyers of biggest demographic for the pasta pots.
Should get a share in Tesco meal deals, amateur boxers.
Yeah,
it's so interesting about how the biggest point of this, man, this conversation and everything in nutrition, especially for boxing and combat sports, it's just so individual. Like with the whole what you eat before you weigh in, what you eat before the weigh-in, what acute weight cut strategies you're using, which we can come on to. But it's just so individual. And I guess, have you realized over time how individualized with different tests you can do? Like we talked about the sweat rate stuff, how you can keep on going, so individualized with your nutrition and your hydration stuff. Has that benefited you much more since you've had this kind of test done and had that trial and error and stuff?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's really important to know what works for you, because like you said, it is very individual. And even the sweat test proves that. Some people in the gym that are heavy sweaters. I know Luke Campbell uses precision hydration and used it out in Dallas, and Lawrence Coley also uses them as well. So they're they're a good company, which we've all got different sweat rates. So it's obviously important to know what works for you, and you've got to keep it, so you like it as well, and it's not too much of a burden, because the last thing you want to be thinking about is hating the food you're eating or hating the plan you're doing. But also what's important is knowing what weight you perform best at, because me and Lawrence are very different fighters, but we're in the same division, and we both perform better at certain weights. You hear some people putting on 18 to 20 pound like after a weigh-in, which is just I would not be able to perform at that. So I know what weight I perform at.
It's and like 9 kilos, 10 kilos nearly.
Yeah, it's crazy that some people could do that, put on over a stone and feel comfortable to perform. So, but you hear about it all the time about past fighters and current fighters that they put on X amount of weight when they go into the ring between the weigh-in and getting in the ring. But I know what works for me. So that's the weight we always aim to get to, and usually the weight I naturally get to anyway, because I spend most of my time at that performance weight during camp, and then gradually bring it down. And that's what I perform best at. That's where I hold a shot well. That's where I perform well. I can punch hard, but not be too lethargic and stuff like that. So it's fine tuning and getting to know yourself and what works for you.
So what about the whole bridgerweight? You going down? Would you be able to go down to bridgerweight, you reckon, or are you definite cruiserweight for 2021?
I think bridgerweight's the one up. I think bridgerweight's the 224 pound or 225 pound. I think they're moving cruiserweight in the WBC.
That's
down 10 pounds. So yeah, I could probably get down to 190, but if governing bodies, if they're not all going to do it, I'll just avoid the WBC for now and just not bother. I wonder if they're doing it just for Canelo's sake, because he's obviously done every other weight, and then maybe they're just gonna, okay, you only got to go up another 15 rather than another 25 pounds. That would make sense. That's the first I've thought about it. I actually over in Dallas, I actually saw him. He was obviously part of Garcia's team, and breakfast the next morning, I said to him, you coming up to cruiserweight? And half called him out. So we'll see. Canelo CBS in Vegas 2022 maybe.
December 2021.
Show me the paycheck.
What tips would you give, mate, to any fighters that may be starting out or just turned over to pro or trying to get to an elite level that you're at? What sort of quick tips would you give, or stuff which you kind of wish that you'd done or learned on the early stages of your career? What sort of tips would you give?
I think it's general. My tip for people in general is they probably don't eat enough protein. I think you'll know that a lot in because boxing is very much a high intensity sport. It's like people want to to fuel themselves. They know they need carbs, but at the same time they've got to make weight. So it's sort of like do you eat carbs? Do you not? It's like one or the other rather than getting it right. But within athletes, obviously, there's all the studies that show how much protein an athlete should have, or a guideline at least. And it's hard to get enough in. But so I think for someone at cruiserweight, they probably struggle because they might just have porridge with honey for breakfast, and then that's and then not eat till till midday. So they've only probably got like a 8-hour window to get 200 grams minimum of protein in, and I think that's a massive one for people, is the protein intake. Something I learned early on, and once I learned it was I put on a lot more muscle. I could train better, felt stronger naturally, and made weight easier. But people just associate weight training and protein with gaining weight. You hear about a lot of boxers not wanting to lift weights because they're going to put on muscle. which is obviously ridiculous when you know the science behind it. It makes no sense, even from an injury prevention point of view, to not lift weights. So when I hear of people not lifting weights, I find it bizarre. Like I said, mainly for the injury prevention, and then obviously the protein comes with that as well. And you go, oh, I don't want to eat too much protein because I'll just put on weight, because there's this sort of this idea that that's what it's about, because of obviously the bodybuilding era. It's like, we eat this much protein, so people just assume that protein puts on weight, and obviously we know that that's not the case. But yeah, I'd say that would be my number one tip for most people, is just making sure you're getting enough protein in. Obviously there's plenty of equations and rough estimates of what you should have, whether it's a pound per 1 gram per pound of lean body mass, or whatever it is. But yeah, that is I'd say protein, making sure you're getting that, especially as boxing such a hard, difficult sport, and you're training probably a minimum of 9-10 times a week as a professional, and they're all intense sessions, so you're going to need to recover. But at the same time, with the hydration, I think that's a real important area. And sleep and hydration are always my two most important things if I don't feel up to scratch. They're always the first two questions I ask myself, whether if I'm not performing or I'm not feeling well or got a headache, is have I had enough sleep, and am I hydrated enough? So I'd say that'd be my tips, would be, three most important areas would be sleep, hydration, and then protein content.
Yeah, awesome, mate. It's a common theme, and I'd probably say exactly the same thing if I've seen applications that I've had for people that I work with, or conversations or things that I've heard with combat sport athletes or boxers. It is those three things, and with the protein one, it's usually a case of the hydration and the sleep being mixed into one. So fighters will spar at like 8 p.m., finish at 9, warm down, get home at 10, and go straight to sleep. Or they'll try and go straight to sleep, but their adrenaline's rushing, so they don't actually get that good quality sleep, and then they're not hydrating properly afterwards. So it's like just plugging the gaps. Is that something you found works for you? Like maybe at that situation, having a whey protein shake, ticking that protein box, ticking that fluid box, and then that will help with your muscle soreness. You get a little bit better sleep. It's just the little things like that. Have you found making the small tweaks, or like plugging those gaps, has kind of like paid off for you?
Yeah, for sure. I'm very fortunate now to be boxing full time. So, because it's all we do. We train at say 10, 11 in the morning, and then the latest we'll ever finish a session now is like 7 in the evening. So we're very fortunate in that sense. I mean, I used to get up at 5:30, go to work for 6:30, open up a gym I used to work at, then finish at 2, go and do my other job, which was training professionals and teaching boxing. So training professionals, take a class till 7, and then I'd start training at 8:30 till 9:30. And it was very long days, and it was hard to eat enough. I was always almost struggling to stay at the weight when I was an amateur, because I wasn't naturally that weight, and I was on my feet all day, and then training late at night. And then, like you said, it's hard to switch off when you get home from a hard training session as an amateur, finishing at 9:30. I won't get home till 10, and then it's trying to switch off and get ready to try and get enough sleep before getting up at 5:30 the next morning, which is always really difficult. But thankfully it paid off, and now I get to get up at 8 in the morning and finish training at 7 in the evening, and it's 2 training sessions a day, and then just focus on just that, and just focus on my training and getting as good as I can be as a boxer and as an athlete. And I'm obviously lucky now to be able to do that, and since I've been able to really make myself accountable for my sleep, it's helped massively.
And then tip number 4, an extra one, would be for fighters to get a whoop.
Yeah, get a whoop, and I'm working with them now. Hopefully, gonna have a little thing with them for my podcast, and hopefully be able to get a discount. So keep an eye out on Perfect Athlete, and hopefully if anyone is interested in a Whoop, then they can hopefully get a discount on them as well. But they're definitely worth it, because I've even got my mum on one now. She actually had a stroke in August, and thankfully she's okay, but her sleep's always been chronically bad. So I got her one for Christmas, and she's getting addicted to it. She'll message me most mornings and be like, "This is how much REM I've had. This is how much deep sleep I've had." And I'm like, "Well, okay, that's good." Or if she wakes up during the night and stuff, she's always been a chronically bad sleeper. But another thing with that as well is the mouth taping. So make sure you're nasal breathing while you sleep. So that's something I've been doing for probably 4 months now, 4 or 5 months. And my mum's done it as well since she had a stroke, and she's dreaming for the first time in like 20 years. It's crazy. It's made such a difference. And
how do you do that then? What do you do? Do you just wear a mask, or like, well, everyone's wearing a mask at the moment, but
it's there's something called myotape. It's a guy called Patrick McKeown, who I'm hoping to get on the podcast actually soon. Hopefully in January I'll have him on the podcast. But he really specialises in breath work. He's got a book called The Oxygen Advantage, and he brought out this mouth tape he talks about how we should nasal breathe, how it's better, your nose is there for breathing. When you look at the functions of the mouth, it's not there for breathing. So when people come mouth breathers, you're almost doing yourself a disservice. So yeah, he's got this little orange tape. It's not the best tape. There's little, just goes around the mouth to keep your lips pressed together. There's a hole in the middle so you can drink through the night and stuff. But I've even done a few training sessions, like nasal breathing training sessions and stuff as well. But yeah, with the mouth tape when I sleep, that helps massively, and you just feel calmer throughout the night. Like if you wake up, I get back to sleep a lot easier. But I haven't actually finished his book yet, so it's on my list of books to read. Once I'll know more of the science behind it once I've finished his book. But definitely interesting, and a lot of science behind the breath work and stuff like that. I mean, it's the fact it's helped my mum. My mum literally hasn't dreamt in like 20 years since she had a treatment for cancer. So she hasn't dreamt. Her sleep's been chronically bad since. Started mouth taping since she's had a stroke, like probably about 3 weeks after she had a stroke, and and she's now dreaming and stuff like that. So it's crazy, and it's obviously your dream sleep is really important for your brain function and stuff like that. So that's why I got her on it, and she's thankfully listening to me and doing all that, and she's nearly back to. It was just her speech that was affected, but yeah, she's doing really well now, so that's good.
Oh, that's good to hear, mate. So let's talk quickly before we wrap things up about the podcast. We keep talking about it. We're on my podcast at the moment, but the Perfect Athlete podcast. Why did you start it? What was the motivation for sitting down and thinking, yeah, I'm gonna? Because I've been through it as well. What was the motivation of you thinking I'm gonna start this podcast?
Lockdown, obviously, we had a lot of spare time on our hands, training away, and just I was lacking motivation at the beginning of lockdown. I was still training, but it was just that I didn't really have that bit between the teeth. Eventually got a fight sorted, so soon had that bit between the teeth. But I just always interested me. Like I did the nutrition course off my own back, not to make money off it or become a nutritionist, just to make sure I knew I was, getting the most out of me as an athlete, as a fighter, maximising my potential. And then I've loved all different sports my whole life, so it just intrigues me what makes certain athletes tick and what they do. I mean, I watched the F1 documentary, Drive to Survive.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah. And I saw them, like most of them were juggling before they went out to race, and I thought, like, that's crazy. Like they can all juggle to a pretty decent standard. Like I can't juggle, but I thought that's you see a few boxers like Lomachenko's, you see him juggling and stuff like that and doing different things.
And that thing where he drops the tennis balls and then quickly catches the reactions and stuff. Yeah.
All that sort of thing. So there's that, and I guess it's all to do with like the mental plasticity of it all, and what they can do, and just keeping their mind sharp. But little things like that, it just well, if they're juggling, if drivers are juggling, when juggling sort of seen as quite a leisurely thing, but they're juggling, and although it's difficult, it's not as difficult as driving an F1 car. But all these little things that different athletes do, and different and how they do them, whether that's becoming an athlete. What I've found though since I've been doing the podcast is it's more with athletes, it's more mental than it is physical. But when you think about an athlete, you think about the physical side. When you say the word athlete, you picture sort of like a sprinter or Cristiano Ronaldo or someone like that. But I've had Scott Mitchell, the darts player, on the podcast, and he's an athlete. I don't know many people that could do just that same action of just throwing the dart. It doesn't change it. At least in boxing, you've got endless amounts of different punches you can throw from different positions. You've got the footwork, strength training, the running. Everything's different. Like nothing's ever the same. They're just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again for hours a day, and that's a mental fortitude in itself. And I think that's something to be admired. People see it just sort of as a game you play down the pub, but the people that are just playing it down the pub aren't the people that are making money from it. So there's definitely an athlete side to darts players. But yeah, there's all different, and there's so many different sports that people don't even know about or consider. And I had world number 2 female polo player on, Hazel. I actually went to college with Hazel, and she's done really well since leaving college in polo. She only started playing when she was at college, similar to me with my boxing. And and it's crazy. Like I didn't even know much about polo, but all different sports interest me, and things that make athletes tick. And hopefully I can pick some stuff up along the way, from the athletes and from the specialists, like the precision hydration guys. Obviously had James Moran on the podcast as well, and I'm learning all the time off that, and hopefully I can take a few bits to help me with my career as well.
That's it, mate. Just getting the little bits and bobs from all the different types of sports. Like, it's funny you say about the motorsport ones, and I have friends which say like, oh, they're not athletes, they just drive a car. And then you think about it, the amount of mental capacity they have to drive that car for an hour and a half. And Lewis Hamilton saying that they lose like 4 liters of 4 kg during a race, and that kind of stuff, the G-force they have to pull through their core and stuff. It's it's crazy.
Yeah, it's mental. I mean, the motorsport, I really want to get an F1 driver on, because whether they'll disclose how much they actually do, like with regards to the performance side of things and the training side of things, I think people think they're just, like you said, they just race a car. They're just really good drivers, but they're not. They are, and it's all year round. You've got to look after yourself. You're racing for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You have a practice day. Usually Thursday is it, and then they've got like the qualifying, then the race itself, and then there's another one 2 weeks later or a week later. It has been obviously this season, but yeah, I'd love to have an F1 driver, especially someone like George Russell, who's gone from, I think he's shown how important the car is this year, but when he got the shot with Mercedes, obviously very, very unlucky not to win the race that day, let alone just finish on the podium. But he was so unfortunate, bless him. But he proved how much the car's a factor. So there's even getting someone like an engineer on, that the engineers are important. And when Lewis Hamilton says about there being a team of 200 people and how important they are, it's a team winning. It really is a team, because obviously if he wasn't in that car, I think he'd struggle to win. But then again, if everyone was in the same car, the drivers seem to say that Lewis would win even if they were all in the same car. So it's amazing to see what goes into F1. I'd love to get an F1 driver on the podcast.
I think that's it as well about the whole team. I've seen that the F1 pit crew and stuff doing S&C stuff and reaction training and having their own nutrition stuff, and also similar for like football referees. And you think, looking from the outside in, you think like, why would they need to have, I don't know, good nutrition, or why would they need to do strength training? Well, it's like, if they could be more switched on and they can change a tire 0.02 seconds quicker, the effect that has on the race might be X. So it's like,
Yeah.
It's almost similar to boxing in a way when you have all those people in your team and like you're doing the sweat testing, or you've got your trainer, your physio, the whatever you've got going on, S&C coaches and stuff, and how that whole team around that one individual gets that collective, achieves that collective goal, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much that goes into it. I mean, an F1 team, obviously you get Lewis Hamilton stand on the podium, but there's hundreds of people that go into that. The boxing team, there's not just a boxer, there's probably 10 people that are involved, and having a massive influence on the fighter. But an F1 team, you're literally talking hundreds. It is crazy, absolutely crazy, the engineering and the science that goes into F1.
I look forward to listening to that episode, mate. If people want to like check out the podcast, what's it called and where can they find it?
You can subscribe to the emails on perfectathletepodcast.com, and then on socials it's just Perfect Athlete Pod. So on Instagram, it's just Perfect Athlete Pod, and you find the link to the website there and stuff like that, and hopefully keep it going and hopefully get some exciting guests on.
Yeah, awesome stuff, mate. What's 2021? What you got planned for 2021 in terms of boxing and training? Obviously, it's looking a bit strange at the moment, but potentially towards summer and end of the year, because you had a fight in before the
August. I got the boxing in fight camp, which obviously is very grateful for. Was meant to fight in November, but my opponent pulled out with an eye injury. That's for the British title, but hopefully getting that fight in March. Spoke to Shane this morning, and I think we're looking at March. So got about 9 or 10 weeks now of before that fight. So yeah, that's the plan. British and European champion by this time next year. That's the goal, and get some more belts under me, and be in some wicked fights, and just keep improving. And then obviously, we're only a week in, so another 50 odd guests on the podcast as well. So it should be interesting.
Awesome, mate. Well, best of luck for 2021, and thank you very much for giving up your time to come on my podcast. I really enjoyed this chat.
Yeah, my pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me, and I enjoyed it too.